To whoever may need this nugget of encouragement, things will be alright, so quit your worrying. I get it, the odds can stack back against the wall, but even consider it such, know you'll stand tall. Sat and watch from the sidelines one too many times. Wicked games we play make me wanna lose my mind. Found solitude knowing it'll be over soon. Ever need a boost, count on me for the 1-2. Trouble don't last when the tough get going. Baby, all we do is win, so show me my opponent. Adversity, doubt, stress, could care less, cause how we handle those like an S on our chest. Super proud of how we held it down on the way up. Can't wait for our day to ball, this is a layup. Nobody ever said this would be easy, but trust when I say that you got it. I know you've been looking for a breakthrough, trying our best to make do. Every day is something new, but change gon' come, oh yes it's true. Brighter days are straight ahead. Follow me, won't be misled. Just look up, don't hang your head, and we'll get to the promised land. Somebody loves you, please don't forget such. Take your time, no need to feel rushed. We gon' shine somehow one day. Word to O'Shea, today's been a good day. Don't let one bad apple spoil the tree. The fruits of our labor seem ripe, can't you see?
What's going on, Queens? Welcome back to another episode of Her Path, Her Power. I'm your girl, Ray. I've always got something to say. I'm your host, your sister in growth, and today, your biggest advocate for love with boundaries. Before we dive into today's topic, let's ground ourselves in truth. Romans chapter 12, verse 10 says, "Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves." This verse reminds us that love is about mutual respect and care. It's not about losing yourself or constantly giving without receiving. But here's the thing. It's impossible to love others well if we don't first honor and value ourselves. Today, we're talking about self-worth in relationships. What does it mean to truly love and value yourself? How do we set boundaries that protect our peace without feeling guilty? And how do we redefine love in a way that reflects our self-respect and God's love for us? So let's dive in.
Soundstripe.
So let's be real for a second. How many of us have stayed in a relationship longer than we should have because we didn't want to be mean or bent over backwards trying to fix someone because we thought loving them hard enough would make them change? I've been there. I'm very guilty. And to be completely honest with you, I know it's not a pretty scene. There have been so many relationships that I continued, even relationships that weren't ever really relationships. I just so happened to have given so much of myself to the point where I didn't know how to let something so toxic go. When there wasn't a clear, defined truth in the relationship that we were in a relationship, is probably the worst kind of relationship that I've been in. The relationship that was the hardest for me to let go. The truth is, when we don't value ourselves, we end up in relationships that reflect that lack of self-worth. We tolerate things that we just downright shouldn't. We ignore red flags, and we convince ourselves that being selfless means sacrificing our own needs. And that's a damn lie. But let me tell you something. Self-worth isn't selfish. Setting boundaries doesn't make you mean. And love, real, healthy love, requires both people to show up with mutual respect, care, and effort. So as we move through today's podcast, we're going to unpack what it means to honor your self-worth in relationships, how to set those boundaries that feel good, and why redefining love is one of the most empowering things that you can do. So let's start with the basics. Why self-worth matters so much in relationships, because the why is always going to be the most important benefactor. When you know your worth, you're not afraid to ask for what you need, to say no when something doesn't feel right, or to just walk away when a relationship just no longer serves you. But when your self-worth is shaky, that's when things get messy. We start accepting the bare minimum because we start to believe that we don't deserve more than what we're already getting. We let people cross our boundaries because we are afraid of losing them. So we start to become flexible in the boundaries that we originally set up, which goes to show that other person who keeps crossing that boundary that your boundaries are flexible and that they can keep testing your boundaries because they also know that you're afraid of losing them. We also tend to stay in situations that drain us because we don't trust that we are worthy of something better. If any of this sounds familiar to you, don't beat yourself up. This isn't about shame. It's about awareness. Because once you recognize the patterns, you can start to change them and you can start to believe that you deserve so much more than what you're accepting. You're a queen. Your crown is just crooked right now, and I'm here to straighten that shit out. Now let's talk about redefining love. For so many of us, love has been framed as sacrifice. And while there are sacrifices that need to be made in a relationship, we're also told that if we love someone, we should forgive them endlessly, put their needs above ours, and stick it out no matter what. Here's the thing though. Love is not a martyrdom. Love is supposed to be mutual, reciprocal. Real love, from what I have seen, I may not have experienced it, but I have seen it. And I am actually learning from a 63-year-old woman on Instagram. If you go to her page, her name is Bad Girl Riri 504. What I have learned, not only from her book, but also her Instagram page, is real love looks like respecting each other's boundaries. Real love looks like showing up consistently, effortlessly. Real love looks like taking responsibility for your actions. Real love looks like growing together instead of tearing each other down. If you're constantly questioning your worth in a relationship, that's not love. It's a red flag. And redefining love means recognizing that you deserve better than the bare minimum. Now, just because these things can happen in a relationship, that doesn't mean that one person is a bad person and the other person is a good person and vice versa. It could mean that you two just aren't right for each other. You're not fueling your fires with compassion and passion. You're just fueling the fire. Now, let me tell you something. I was with someone who thought that it was okay to belittle me, not only as, just a mother, but as a woman as well. I got told that I don't clean enough, which is essentially calling me dirty. I got compared to someone else as a woman and a mother. And it was solely meant to make me feel less of value. We were arguing, and I believe the argument was about money. And somehow my lack of, cleanliness in their eyes was something that needed to be brought up in a conversation that was about something totally different. In my eyes, that was me being devalued. That was me being torn down. And I chose to walk away from it. Yes, life got harder for me because we shared a financial responsibility to houses and cars and children. And, these are things that we shared. And I knew that by stepping away from that kind of relationship, it was essentially going to be harder for me financially. I knew that it was going to eventually get harder mentally and emotionally doing everything by myself. But I've done it before and I can do it again. And that is the strength that I held into. That's the strength that I held onto and that I grounded myself into. Because one thing that I have learned about myself and being in toxic relationships that I chose not to walk away from, it was understanding that my value and my worth was a lot higher than I was giving myself credit for. And that's where the awareness kicked in. That's why it was so easy for me to walk away from this person. Because what you're not going to do is you're not going to make me feel like shit. You're not going to try and tear me down, and you're not going to attack my mental and emotional health just because it makes yourself feel good or validated or right. So let's get into boundaries, because honestly, this is where a lot of us struggle. Here's what I've learned about boundaries. They're not about controlling other people. They're about protecting your peace. A boundary is simply a line that says, This is what I need to feel safe, respected, and valued. And it's something that I'm actively learning in therapy, is setting boundaries, not only in, non-platonic and platonic relationships, but also with myself. Setting boundaries and understanding that there is a line that I have to initiate that simply cannot be crossed. For example, here's a boundary. I won't tolerate yelling or name calling. That's one. Here's another one. I need us to communicate openly about how we're feeling. And then here's another one. I'm not available for late night texts if we're not in a committed relationship. The hardest part about boundaries actually isn't setting them. It's enforcing them. Because let's be real, let's be honest. The people who benefited from your lack of boundaries will also be the first to test them. And that includes family. Family has ultimately been deemed as one of the highest people on your tier of people that you care about that will test your boundaries first. And they think that it's okay just because they're family. Make them understand that just because they're family doesn't mean that they can devalue, disrespect you, and cross boundaries that you set up to protect your peace. And although they're the first to test your boundaries, that's okay. Because when you stick to your boundaries, you're teaching people how to treat you. And that's powerful. If they don't want to treat you the way that you're expecting them to treat you, there's the damn door. They're not being forced to stay in your life. One of the biggest hurdles to honoring our self-worth is guilt. We feel guilty for saying no. We feel guilty for putting ourselves first. And we feel guilty for walking away from relationships that no longer serve us. But let me ask you this. What's the alternative? Staying in relationships that drain you? Saying yes when you really mean no? Sacrificing your peace for someone else's comfort? You're not responsible for comforting someone else. That person is responsible for comforting themselves. Don't put that burden on yourself. You don't need to feel guilty for prioritizing your well-being. In fact, when you value yourself, you're better able to show up for the people in your life, because love that comes from a place of self-worth is healthier, it's stronger, and it's more sustainable than love that comes from self-sacrifice. It's also more consistent. As you guys always know, I always bring it back to faith, because knowing your worth starts with knowing who created you. Psalm chapter 139 verse 14 says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That means you are worthy of love and respect simply because you exist. You don't have to earn it, prove it, or beg for it, but you do need to demand it. When you doubt your worth, remind yourself that God doesn't make mistakes. You were created with purpose, and you deserve relationships that honor that purpose. So here's what I want you to take away from this today. If anything else, self-worth is the foundation of every healthy relationship. When you honor your value, set boundaries, and redefine love on your own terms, you create space for the kind of relationships that truly nourish your soul, and you will feel it. All right, y'all, I want to thank you for spending this time with me on another episode of Her Path, Her Power. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend who might need this reminder. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with me on social media using the hashtag Her Path, Her Power. I would love to know what's one boundary that you feel like you can set before we get into the new year. So until next time, keep walking your path and owning your power. I promise you, you've got this. So stay fierce, stay fabulous, and I'll catch y'all next week.
Giving up seems tempting, but no need, cause I got you and you got me. A little UNITY will get us by. Through the storm and the rain, I'll be by your side. Look alive, the best has yet to come. Just some words of wisdom, plenty more. I know you've been looking for a breakthrough, trying our best to make do. Every day is something new, but change gon' come, oh yes it's true. Brighter days are straight ahead. Follow me, won't be misled. Just look up, don't hang your head, and we'll get to the promise, yeah. And it may seem like things ain't working out, but But I know we gon' find a way without a doubt. Just hold on a little longer, you gon' see this through. I've been there, sir.